Okay, so here's take, I don't know, 6 or 7 on my SHTF communication bundle here. I did one long video and I think it came out too long, so I'm going to just do snippets of on what kind of electronics you might want to have for WROL, SHTF, that kind of stuff. Okay, so on this little snippet, I'm going to talk about low-end, cheap FRS, GMRS radios. Okay, these type of things, like these little audio boxes, I knew you get them from $20 to $50 a set. I thought this was FRS only. It turns out it's FRS and GMRS on there, so which means it probably transmits at 3 to 5 watts instead of the 1 watt you might get out of an FRS alone. And these are cheap. Okay, you can get them at yard sales and garage sales. You know, even if they're 10 years old and a little scratched up, one thing I'm finding about these radios, even when they're old, is they seem good. They're built solid, just because small portable communication electronics is better than it ever was, because people expect high performance out of cell phones, and a lot of cell phone components, when the cell phone technology has been moved on to something better, the components are still used in two-way radios on stuff that's been established. Okay, so one of these FRS GMRS radios from, let's say, 2005 is going to be using cell phone technology from the late 90s that was, and not so much just the technology, but the parts inside, and little transmitter diodes and stuff that were proven to have worked. There's nothing experimental going on with these things anymore. Everything's proven to work, and when you get one, they're solid, they work. They use little liquid crystal displays, which people just don't use in the hotshot electronics as much anymore, you know. So I don't care if it has a liquid crystal versus a color display. I mean, I just want to know what channel I'm on. Okay, so these things work really well. The other thing is they almost always take very conventional batteries. They're not going to take a proprietary battery the way a high-end two-way radio will. And so you're usually talking AA or AAA batteries. You can put rechargeables in them; they'll be just fine. Sometimes they have a rechargeable battery pack you can use instead of the AA's or AAA's. But don't sweat it, because you can just get rechargeable AA, AAA batteries. And so what I do is I have an old M203 grenade pouch here. I can fit a few of these radios in a pouch, and that's a comms kit right there. If I'm going to hook up with some people to convoy in or out of someplace, and you know what, some radios are better than no radios, and any radio is better than shouting out the window of your truck in the traffic. Okay, so that's a good way to go. Cheap, easy prepping stuff. I keep two-way radios of some sort in every bug-out bag, every vehicle. I don't have all that many of these kits. This whole kit, the pouch, cost me almost as much as the radios did. So, you know, a couple old ammo pouches with two-way radios in them. Keep your eyes open at garage sales, flea markets. Try to get something that's FRS and GMRS if you can, but if you get something that's FRS only, I think this radio was FRS only, no problem. You know, I mean, it's just a good, cheap, throwaway loaner radio. No problem at all, man. And they're almost always solid. They almost always work, even when they're used, even when they've been knocked around a little bit. Now, if you want to step up, there's two ways you can step up on these radios. One, you can step up to something that have a little bit more transmit power, which can help or hurt depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, realistic distance on these things, like I said, the transmitter in these is like a late 90s cell phone. In a late 90s cell phone, remember, it was only trying to get to the nearest cell phone repeater. It's not trying to call around the world, okay? These are not repeater compatible. If you want repeater compatible GMRS radios, a lot of those have been taken out of circulation or out of production, and I'm going to get a little more into that later. A little bit higher end is an FRS radio that from Motorola. The Motorola's are usually a little more solid, a little more weatherproof. This one right here, it actually has a scramble feature built into it. These were in production from 1998 to I think around 2004, and they were taken out of production. There was a request from Department of Homeland Security and the FCC to Motorola that even though these were legal, they wanted them removed from production. And They were removed from production, I think, in early 2004. Some people told me they were removed from production as early as late 2002, not long after 9/11. But Motorola had contracts to deliver these to a lot of wholesalers, so they had to make good on those. I don't know. One of these, I think I paid $35 on a closeout from a sporting goods wholesaler. When these originally hit the market, they were about $120 for this version, and then there was a so-called tactical model with a compass and a compass and a barometer and some other kind of useless things in there that that went for about $350, and the prices gradually went down on them. And they were really into concealing how good of a radio it was when they were pulled off the market because of the reason they were pulled off the market. They were pulled off the market because the government does not really want you having an FRS, GMRS radio with a short-range scramble capability. The reason being is these cannot be remotely monitored without somebody being fairly close to the radio using relatively specialized monitoring equipment. Now, one thing you might say is, why wouldn't somebody just go and buy one of these radios for $30-40 and then use it to monitor people? Well, the reason was they had to buy a radio for $30-40 to monitor people. There's a chip in these that works with a scramble feature in them that they didn't want to update all of the NSA and CIA and whatever, all these spy agency machines that are set up to monitor other people's radio transmissions. They didn't want to have to update the software on it, and they definitely didn't want to have to buy chips from Motorola to update the hardware on that stuff. Even though they could, even though the more advanced agencies do, they really didn't want to have to go through the trouble. So they politely asked Motorola to pull these off the market, and they did. The only other radios I know of that had a true scramble feature, and that's not your lockout privacy code, but a true scramble feature, was the Garmin Rhino. It was a scramble feature that you could selectively turn on and off. It's turned on this one. Now the cool thing about the Rhino is that it would sense that if another radio is using scramble, then it would go into that mode. Now some people will have one of these things, and I'll give it away used really cheap, and they're going to say, wow, you know, when I talk to my friends on my radio, it sounds like shit. Well, that's because you left a scramble left on, and their radio isn't capable of deciphering that. So if you're at a yard sale, garage sale, flea market, looking at somebody's eBay listing, and they say, yeah, the radio looks like it works, but when I talk to somebody, it sounds all fucked up, buy the thing, because all it is they don't know how to use it, and they left a scramble on. You can selectively turn the scramble off. You can also selectively turn the location feature on these off. Now, because this has a larger display, a little GPS map, anybody with one of the Garmin Rhino series radios can activate a feature in a radio that tells other people in their own little group. It's a security password or code enabled thing. That you can transmit your location to anybody else in a group. Now, these radios are a few $100, and they have some newer models with a bright color screen and everything, and those are, I understand, are close to $500. But the newer models with a color screen will not run the scramble feature. So the trick is, look for Garmin Rhino 120s gathering dust on a store shelf. Look for them at yard sales, garage sales, flea markets. Try to get a deal on them. Try to get them below $100. And these are an excellent standalone radio, because here's something you can do with this radio is you can set a scan feature on that, like that. Okay, see how that goes. And then with one of these radios, let's say this one's set for scramble. It's set for channel 14, lockout code 3. Now here, watch what happens when I go to transmit. Okay, see how that showed up on the screen right there? Okay, boom. That's how quickly it will home in on a thing. It takes anywhere from a half second to 3 seconds of a transmission, and this thing will grab that frequency, grab that channel, grab the lockout code, and tell you what it is. Now, if you have a scanner, you can set scanners up to kind of get into these, but all they're going to do is they're going to tell you this frequency. They're not going to tell you that lockout code and everything. So it would take you another half hour of going through the lockout codes to be able to talk back to somebody whose transmission you just heard. With this thing, once this told me it would go to 14.3, I could take this thing off of the scan mode, adjust the channel to 14, channel 14, code 3, and I'm on the radio net with the users of these radios immediately, without even knowing them, without meeting them. By just scanning the radio waves, I can do this. Now, I've been on military operations where we weren't issued very good radios at that time, and a lot of guys were using privately purchased radios. And they were using them all different brands. When a lot of these things first came out, some of the channels didn't mean the same thing on one radio as they meant on the other. Well, all I had to do was tell somebody, hey, let me see your radio for a minute. I'd set mine on scan, press the push-to-talk button on his radio, and his channel and his lockout code comes up on my radio, and I can enter their net. And my particular job was something where we got attached to other units a lot. So this worked really well when nobody wants to figure out how a SINGARS work, or the SINGARS batteries are going dead all the time, or they're just fucking up all the time. And SINGARS is really good for high security with all that frequency hopping stuff, but reliability is more important than high security when you get into straight up in the bush tactical operations and convoy operations. Reliability is more important than security, and I'm going to say it again. Reliability is more important. That's why there's a lot of times guys get frustrated with the equipment and they just start screaming. Okay, there's no security in screaming, but they know that if they scream, they're going to be heard. If they talk some bullshit code on a radio, somebody's going to pretend to ignore them, or maybe the radio's fucked up. Okay, so reliability is more important than security, unless you're talking about that, super high-end financial transactions or something like that. So the more tactical an operation gets, the more reliability matters than security. But with these radios, with a scramble feature, it's not bad. Not bad to have that. Now the other thing is, with El Cheapo, with no scramble feature, I'm on 525. I hit my transmit button up here, and it took a couple seconds, maybe a second or two, for this radio to pick it up. So these are good if you can find them. If you got to break down and buy them new, it's still a decent investment. The technology on these doesn't change as often as, let's say, your laptops and stuff, but it's not as but it's not going to last as long as buying a gun. Okay, although with all the new plastic frame guns, people think those will last 20 years. Good luck with that. Okay, but this radio, yeah, I'll bet it would last as long as anything Kel-Tec makes. And so yeah, good radios for the cheap end of FRS, GMRS, should hit the fan communication. If you can find these scrambled T6300 series, go for it. If you can't, it's not the end of the world, but it's nice to have something with a scramble capability. If you get some of these, and they're $5, $10 each, at somebody's yard sale, flea market, grab them. Why not? I got a little kit here that works with that. It's good to go.